everyone, welcome to another video, and today I will be showcasing my what can I call it? Retaliation one clone army build, which stacks a lot of different things, and I will be showing you how it works step by step. I'm doing it a bit differently this time, so I'm just gonna first tell you how the gold-plated staff works. So first of all, you equip it, you level it up, and then at I think it's like 42,000 kills, unless you have some Reaper affinity, you will then get the primordial version and get this one right here. So what it does is simply giving you a bit of flat thorns damage, as you can see. It also grants you a lot of life equal to your thorns damage. And that's very important on this character, because that's pretty much our only defense. Like, we don't scale any armor, elemental resistance, and stuff like that. We don't need that. That's not very important at all. Another thing is it grants you percent thorns damage equal to your percent retaliation damage. And retaliation damage is what you reflect back to the enemies, percentage-wise. So as you can see, we have 841 retaliation damage that then becomes thorns damage. And that's insane for this character. It's actually crazy how they actually give us this much for a character like this. The other thing is just the cooldown time of gold armor is reduced by 1 second every time an enemy deals damage to you. That's not very important. But the very important note is the primordial benediction. That's the very powerful mod of this Reaper right here. As you can see, your primary skill and secondary skill deals a lot of additional damage equal to your thorns damage. And it's 175% of your thorns damage is going to be additional damage to your secondary and your primary and secondary ability. That is absolutely insane, and I will show you how I got this much, and how you can scale the numbers to some extreme degrees. And another thing is that you have to keep up gold armor, otherwise you take 100% increased damage taken. It's not very that it doesn't really do much, except for granting you a lot of damage reduction. But when you have like over 250,000 life, nothing kills you, pretty much. So yeah, let's go over the devoted Shuler. This is probably the most important part. And the one thing I am exploiting on this character is this node right here, Magic Mutation. It simply means that you can scale a lot of mana to grant a lot of flat thorns damage. And this is here where we get pretty much all our thorns from. So if I, let's take it off, like I have over 250,000 life. If I take that off, yeah, you see how much of a difference it does, and especially on the flat damage as well. 40,000 additional damage is still quite a lot. But with this one, it's on steroids. And we get some great bonuses as well, which I will showcase later. But the other thing is we're scaling a bunch of flat mana everywhere. So instead of scaling flat life on gear that you would regularly do on a normal character, we just scale mana instead, because the plated superior golded something is granting us a lot of life equal to our thorns. So we get 186,000 max life out of this bad boy right here. It's actually insane. So as you can see, flat mana, percent mana, retaliation, all of that good stuff everywhere on gear where you can fit it in. So that's one of the things we do, as well as attribute. So this attribute tree is it looks kind of silly that I invest so many points into different things, but they're doing us a great favor. So first of all, the Fury node is just for a bit of crit chance. That's very nice. 10% crit for 10 points. I think that's worthwhile. Determination is just for max life, so we can get our numbers pretty high with this. As you can see, it gave us like 40,000 flat life right there. So I think that's very worth it. Seal grants us a lot of flat mana, as well as a bit of Ancestral Strike chance, which we can use for some sort of defense that I will explain later, if I get over it. There's so much to explain on this character. Willpower is for percent max mana, very, very powerful. You get 32% right here, very, very powerful. Dexterity, that is for purely the projectile speed and a bit of attack speed, like 12.5% attack speed. That's kind of nice, but mainly just for the projectile speed to clear even faster than normal. And then the other node is just bravery. You don't have to pick this, but I do like the bit of movement speed that you get, as well as this node right here, the rank 15 one, that grants you some crit chance equal to the things that you have picked up recently. So, let's go over the damaging skill and why we picked it. So, Orb of the Arcane Master is arguably one of the most powerful abilities in the game, simply because there's so many things that you can scale damage with. And one of the first things is right here. Like already getting this one, you can get 40% multiplicative damage just by putting on the ultimatum of perfect segmentation. And yeah, that's very nice. But the big juicer is, of course, the clone. The clone is what makes this character insanely powerful, because we can then scale Totem Effect, and we can just do our own business. Like, we don't have to cast it ourselves, so we can like run around in circles and deal a crap load of damage to enemies. Another thing is this one right here, Ancestral Orb. This just doubles our damage. Yep, nothing else to say. Like you can see, when I take it off, it cuts our damage in half. And then we have this one, the Need Backup passive point, that grants us 5 additional projectiles. And you're probably wondering, oh, but it deals 50% reduced damage. Not when you put on this legendary effect right here. So even though you have that bracelet on, it's really not that important. Like if you have half of this damage, it's still insanely powerful. But very nice to have nonetheless. And then the last one is the Greater Primal Orb, which makes us almost deal twice as much damage. And the cooldown is not affected, again because of this legendary right here, because it states that you cannot get reduced damage from upgrades and increase cooldown and so on. So that's an insanely powerful legendary item that you can get your hands on. Otherwise, you can still do it without it, because there's one mechanic on the devoted Shuler that I'm going to showcase right here. And that is this one right here, the emblematic caster. I'm not sure how you pronounce that. But as you can see here, it says on the non-temporal mage skills have 30% reduced cooldown for each temporal emblem you have. And you can get 3 of those, and that means 90% cooldown. Oh my god, that's insane. So, as you can see, let's see if we like cast this skill a bunch of times. It is 0.40 seconds cooldown, but when you use something like Chrono Puncture, like 3 times, boom, 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 the cooldown is suddenly like nothing. Like it is pretty much 90% you cut off on the cooldown. It's actually insane. And that's why we can shoot that many balls on the screen that fast. It's I don't know. It's just so insanely crazy. And the reason why we're using Chrono Puncher is just because we can like attack very fast with it to get up our emblems. And that's like if you go into a map. Oh my god! Stop talking to me. Like this, you can see the small orbs down here in the left corner, and as you can see, now we have pure what is it called? Arcanic emblems, and that means our attack speed is very low. But when I start attacking, he suddenly bursts out a shitload of projectiles. It's actually insane. So yeah, that's one of the cool mechanics. There's more, and I'm gonna tell you what it is. So, and that is, oh, let's first go over the upgrades on Chrono Puncher real quick. So we pick up this one, and if you somehow manage to hit enemies with Chrono Puncher, you can get more max mana paired with this one, where you can get up to 35 stacks times 2, so that's 70% max mana. You rarely hit that. Like there's, it rarely happens unless you're really going for it. So, okay. So another thing with the Devoted Shuler and why it's so freaking powerful is that you get this one right here, the Diversity node. So if you cast a mage skill from a school which you do not have an emblem of, you have 3 additional projectiles pretty much. So we have the 5 here and then another 3 here. That's 8, total of 9 projectiles because you have like a base of 1 projectile. And if you scale a bit of additional projectiles on gear, and in my case I have 35%, I think that's a very sweet spot where it's very nice to have, because 35% means that I'm getting up to 12 projectiles. So 9 like 9 base times 1.35 grants you 12 projectiles. And that's pretty crazy, especially because normally if you scaled let's say 10 projectiles on a character, no, I mean, let's say 9, that's more like it. As you can see, there's a modifier on the additional projectile modifier that says projectile damage is reduced by 10% for each projectile. Projectile damage, or projectile down to a maximum of 90%. So you can get like a 90% damage reduction if you have a lot of projectiles on a character. And that's quite a lot of damage loss. But on this character, we can utilize this node right here that grants us no penalty at all. As you can see, when I take it on and off, my damage is still the same. And the same goes for this node right here. It's actually so busted, I cannot really believe it. So, and you also get some free clear with rebound. That's so it can hit the walls and then bounce back. Very powerful. So for damage scaling, we have the mods called Totem Effect. Let's see, where is it? Right here. And Totem Effect pretty much means increased damage, and we have quite a lot, I think. Yeah, we have 200%, over 200% Totem Effect. So that's pretty much triple the damage output on our character. Another thing is crit damage, crit chance, attack speed. What else do we have? Damage to elites, that's a tiny bonus as well. We have Thorns multiplier just to get even more flat damage. We have mana multiplier, so we get even more mana. Yeah, I think it's very self-explanatory. And yeah, and for clear, yeah, all of the Arcane Master is very busted when it comes to clear because it has an inbuilt 100% pierce chance, as you can see right here. I'm not sure why, but that's just how the skill works. And then when you pair that with a bunch of projectiles and rebound, you suddenly fill the whole screen with a bunch of balls that deals millions of damage. And it's pretty crazy. So, for survival, we are pretty much just taking the gloves and put some life leech on it, and then you're pretty much good to go because you have so much life. You don't need any damage reduction. We do have some area damage reduction from immaterial body. I'm not sure how you pronounce that. And of course we have gold armor, which grants us a 50% damage reduction. But it is only up 66% of the time. So when that is down, you take like 4 times more damage. So keep that in mind. Because when you have a 50% damage reduction like this, it's like you take half the damage. And when you don't have it, you suddenly take 100% increased damage and don't have the 50% damage reduction. Like when you don't have the buff anymore, you take like double damage. But when you take another 100% increased damage taken, it's suddenly quadruple damage taken. So keep that in mind. But it doesn't really matter. I haven't died to anything yet, I think. Except for maybe like corpse explosions from enemies. And then the last thing I want to go over is the Nimble Warrior rune effect. This is just a completely overkill button that you can press. So if you feel like, I don't have enough damage against this insane enemy, I'm not sure what enemy that could be, you can suddenly go from 13 million average hit damage to 30 million. Like, so you over double your damage by doing that. And on top of that, you can put on gold armor to get even more. So up to 35 million average hit damage. Pretty crazy. Now, the Ancestor Tree. So for a few days ago, they added a new update which granted us the last Ancestral Stone as well as the Primal Stone, where you can use it anywhere in the tree to whatever you like. And to me, the most important thing this build needed was actually just movement speed. So I picked this one to get 33% movement speed, and it feels so nice to have. So I can highly recommend that, especially because you don't need defense, you don't need more damage on the tree. So you already get the damage from these 7 nodes right here. So first of all, we're getting some elemental damage. Okay, Marius, why are you scaling elemental damage? There's a good reason for that in a second. We pick this one, the Paladin's Favor, just for a bit of max mana and elemental penetration. I'm not sure how big of a deal the elemental penetration does, but it does grant us some max mana. And so does this node right here. So that's 16.5% max mana. That's very nice. More elemental damage, more percent elemental damage. And because it grants us this much is because of this one, because it doubles the effect of that node. For some reason, I'm not sure why they intended that. So this is just 76% increased elemental damage, very nice. And then, boom, this one, Elemental Warrior. This is crazy. So we have a bunch of life, and that means we get a bunch of flat elemental damage pretty much for free. and that can get scaled to some insane levels. And yeah, I will show you why. We have 32 million average hit damage. If we take, let's see, how do we do this? Like that. If we take this node off, we suddenly go to 18 million. So yeah, that's actually a big part of our damage. And I'm not sure why. Like, yeah, we do have like a lot of additional damage, but it shouldn't be that much increased, I feel like. Because we only have like 98% increased elemental damage. I'm not sure how that works. I'm not really sure. But that's what it's saying. So yeah, this node, very powerful. Paired with this dark ritual, which is just a 50% more, 50% multiplicative modifier in our damage output. So yeah, the Ancestor Tree is very simple and just straight to it. And it looks like that. And then, let me see, is there any other things? I want to do it a bit differently with this showcase. So I'm not going to go over all my gear and explain everything. I just want to put a link to all my gear in the comments where you can watch it closely yourself. I think that's more important and more easy to understand. Oh yeah, and for the Nimble Warrior, we're using the Rune of Smelleran, Activation Rune, and then the Enhancement Rune by Hagen, just to get it to some insane damage levels. It feels really great, just to get some big numbers. That's pretty much the only reason why. And then the last thing is probably just going to be my stat overlay. So you can see here all my stats in tab 1, 2, and 3. Movement speed, 93%, could be higher, would be nice. Attack speed, relatively high. Elemental damage is pretty high as well. Crit chance, pretty good, especially the damage as well. Now that we have the Nimble Warrior effect up and running. We're not really scaling the Ancestral Strike chance that much. It's if you wanted to get that up and running, you can do that, but it's really not worth it. We have a bit of elemental penetration from the tree, damage to elites, just so they just get one shot no matter what. Not really important though. And then we have the massive flat amount of thorns right here, which we scale through the devoted Shuler node right here with the magic mutation. This is so insane. It's just the perfect node for this build, pretty much. Oh yeah, and another defensive layer. Yeah. Tenacity. Very important. If you do not scale it up to 100%, you will probably get frozen by a lot of things, like, of course, freeze, and then there's also spider webs and a lot of slow effects, and that feels kind of awful. So I can highly recommend getting this 40% node in the devoted Shuler, as well as getting a bunch of stuff on gear. As you can see here, we have tenacity on boots, chest, and some other places, helmet, you name it, up to, where is it? Where's tenacity? It's right here. We have 100%, actually a bit over. It's just such a nice feeling to have when you can actually just ignore freeze and slow effects in this game, because it can be quite annoying, and it's definitely a big quality of life. And then the last tab, the only important thing is just the projectiles is 35%, and you can get that on epic mods. And then we have the Totem Effect as well, very important. And projectile speed, that's very nice. It's just a quality of life and better clear speed. So yeah, I think that's about it. Otherwise, if you have any questions, you can just ask me and I will hopefully answer your questions in the comments. So take care, guys, and hopefully you found this helpful. And yeah, good luck grinding.